Welcome to the English Boost podcast. Let me ask you a slightly uncomfortable question right out of the gate here.
Oh boy. Okay.
Have you ever, completely ruined your own goal just by talking about it?
Oh yeah. I mean, we usually do this with the absolute best of intentions too.
Right.
Because the moment a new idea takes shape, that instinct to just broadcast it to the world can be almost overwhelming.
Exactly. You get this sudden spark for, I don't know, a new business or a major fitness routine or some big creative project, and your immediate impulse is to share that rush of possibility.
Yeah, you want people to feel that high with you.
Right. But today's exploration is investigating this really fascinating concept that we found across psychology, ancient philosophy, and even modern business strategy.
And it's a big one.
It is. We are unpacking why sharing your plans before actually executing them might be, honestly, the most efficient way to sabotage your own success.
Yeah, and just to set the parameters early here, we are not endorsing extreme isolation.
Right, right. We don't want you becoming a secretive weirdo.
Exactly. We aren't advocating for becoming this reclusive person who trusts literally no one. It is fundamentally about protecting the fragile energy of an unformed ambition.
Yeah, before it has the structural integrity to survive reality.
Perfectly said.
So we're going to explore the hidden psychology of goal sharing, the neurochemistry of premature praise, and the really crucial distinction between healthy accountability and toxic validation.
Because understanding these mechanics can completely alter how you approach your next major ambition.
Totally. And the most natural starting point is just that internal urge itself. Like, why is it our first instinct to tell someone when we conceive a new idea?
Right. Well, it represents this moment of pure potential. It's completely untouched by the actual friction of doing the work.
Yeah, it's just pure daydream at that point.
Exactly. And from an evolutionary standpoint, human beings are just wired for connection and collective survival.
Like tribal mentality.
Right. In early human history, social validation wasn't just a feel-good mechanism, It was a literal proxy for safety.
Oh, wow. Because if they approve of you, they don't kick you out of the cave.
Exactly. If the tribe approved of your actions, you remained in the group. And we still carry that ancient circuitry today. So when we share a new ambition, we are subconsciously seeking that tribal endorsement.
We want the people around us to see our potential and, share in the excitement of what we might become.
Yeah, but that ancient circuitry creates a massive blind spot for modern goal setting.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about when you announce a plan. Say you tell your friends you're starting a new tech company,
Okay.
and they react with overwhelming positivity. Right. They tell you how brilliant the idea is.
Yeah, that feels amazing.
It does. Your brain registers a significant social reward. But this triggers a psychological phenomenon known as substitution.
Substitution. Okay, what is actually happening there?
The neurochemical mechanics here explain exactly why we fail. When you receive that premature applause, your brain's reward center basically lights up with dopamine. But the brain is surprisingly bad at distinguishing between the social reward of talking about a goal and the actual physical reward of achieving it.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it gets confused.
So you get the emotional payoff of the finish line before you've even, registered the LLC.
Exactly. And because that biological craving for achievement has been momentarily satiated by the praise, your motivation to endure the grueling, unglamorous work required to actually build the company just plummets.
Oh, man. So in your head, the announcement literally becomes a substitute for the achievement.
You are quite literally talking yourself out of your own dreams by announcing them.
That is wild. It shifts the brain from relying on process-based dopamine, the slow, steady satisfaction of doing the daily work, to outcome-based dopamine, which is cheap and fleeting.
Right, it's a dopamine trap.
There's actually an incredibly vivid story from the source material about this. It's about someone in 2021 who decided they were going to write a novel.
Oh, I remember this one. Classic example.
Yeah, so they told their family, their friends, all their followers. They even created this highly curated Instagram aesthetic mood board for the book.
Which is so common now. They essentially adopted the identity of a writer before adopting any of the habits of one.
Exactly. They spent weeks perfectly arranging images of vintage typewriters and moody coffee cups on this mood board.
Just absorbing all the likes.
Yeah, all the comments from people saying, oh my gosh, I can't wait to read this. They were completely living in the identity without typing a single page of the actual manuscript.
And what was the result of all that public identity building?
Exactly. 3 paragraphs over 6 months.
Yeah. See, the dopamine hit came far too early to sustain them through the inevitable friction of the writing process.
Because writing a book is tedious. It's solitary, quiet work.
Right, and by announcing the dream to a wide audience, they introduced massive external pressure. The project shifted from a personal passion, something you just explore out of curiosity, to a public performance.
Right. They suddenly had an audience waiting for a final product. But that audience arrived long before the idea had grown any real roots.
So the dream just morphed into a deadline, and performance anxiety quietly suffocated the whole project.
And because that premature dopamine hit leaves your motivation so fragile, your unformed idea is completely defenseless against the next major threat,
Which is?
unsolicited feedback.
Oh yeah, that is a huge one.
Because even if you manage to retain some internal drive after that initial round of applause, inviting other people's voices into an unformed plan exposes a very delicate concept to the harsh element.
Yeah, you're exposing it to other people's risk tolerance, their anxieties, and their own personal biases.
And it rarely comes from seasoned experts in the field either. It usually comes from like a former colleague you run into or an uncle at a family dinner who has never left his hometown.
Right, the guy who's worked a remarkably safe job his entire life.
Exactly. The second you mention you are pivoting to a new industry, he suddenly becomes the skeptical industry analyst.
Leaving comments about market volatility.
Yeah. Asking if you have thoroughly considered the macroeconomic risks of your career change.
And they always frame their skepticism as pragmatism, don't they?
Always.
They ask questions designed to sound helpful, but which actually just serve to dismantle your unformed idea piece by piece.
And the worst part is, you are forced to run these intense simulations of failure in your own head just to answer their questions.
Yeah, you weren't even contemplating a total market collapse until this guy brought it up.
Right, so doubt gets planted in mental soil that was previously reserved for pure possibility.
To visualize the thermodynamics of this, the texts provide this deeply resonant analogy that I absolutely love.
The campfire one, right?
Yes. Think of a brand new plan as a tiny, flickering campfire.
Okay.
When it is just you sitting alone by that fire, you have complete control over its environment.
Right. You can act as a windbreak with your own body. You can feed it dry kindling at the exact rate needed to help it grow stronger.
You're protecting the microclimate around the flame.
But the moment you announce the plan prematurely, it's like you invite everyone you know to stand around that fragile spark.
And inevitably, some well-meaning friends start throwing massive wet logs onto the fire.
Meaning well, but totally crushing it.
Exactly. Their unsolicited advice is simply too heavy and too damp for the tiny flame to handle.
Then you have the skeptics acting as a crosswind, blowing the flame sideways with their doubts and questions about market viability.
And not to mention the people who stand too close and use up all the oxygen in the room.
Oh, the ones who make your goal entirely about their own past experiences.
Yeah. So what was once a personal fire requiring quiet, deliberate protection turns into a chaotic, stressful group discussion.
And the fire gets snuffed out, not because the wood was bad, but because the environment was overwhelming.
Which means the strategy here is learning how to build that windbreak and, deflect the advice when you're cornered.
How do you actually do that in the moment?
Well, when someone offers unsolicited concerns, you don't have to absorb them. You can simply say something like, I'm still in the very early stages of mapping this out, but I'll keep that perspective in mind as it evolves.
Oh, that's good. It neutralizes the wet log without letting it crush the flame.
Exactly.
Which kind of brings us to the uncomfortable psychology of why people throw those wet logs in the first place.
Yeah, this is the tricky part.
Because when you share an ambitious plan, the skepticism you face isn't always rooted in genuine concern for your well-being.
But it's also not necessarily driven by conscious malice or, active sabotage either.
Right. It actually stems from a deeply ingrained ego defense mechanism. The source material identifies this unconscious trigger as comparisonitis.
Yeah, comparisonitis.
Yeah.
Because when you declare a bold new ambition, it acts as a mirror for the listener.
It strips away their comfort and forces them to confront their own stagnation.
Exactly. We rely heavily on our peers as benchmarks for our own progress in life. If your social circle operates at a certain baseline of ambition, everyone feels relatively comfortable.
Sure.
But the moment you announce you are leaping forward, you unilaterally shift that benchmark.
Ah. So by striving for more, you inadvertently make them feel like they're falling behind.
Yes. And their reaction, the skepticism, the passive-aggressive questioning, is basically a subconscious attempt to pull the benchmark back down to a level where they feel safe again.
And it masks itself as helpfulness.
All the time.
It's that slight pause before they say, well, that's an interesting choice, or the probing question about whether you truly have the right qualifications for such a leap.
They project their own internal risk aversion onto your goal. And the danger is that even if you intellectually understand they are projecting, that negative energy still transfers directly to you.
Oh, it sets up camp in your mind, rent-free.
Rent-free, you go home and replay that slight hesitation on a loop.
There was a remarkably visceral anecdote about this dynamic in the sources. Someone decided to leave a stable job to shift to a freelance career.
I remember this.
They were excited, energized, and understandably terrified, right? But they made the strategic error of announcing this massive life overhaul at a large Sunday family lunch before they had secured a single paying client.
Yeah, they presented a fragile, untested theory to a room full of highly risk-averse people.
It immediately devolved into a live panel discussion of everyone's deepest anxieties. It was literally like handing a microphone to their family's collective fears.
Oh, I could just imagine.
What are you going to do about health insurance? Did you know most freelancers end up begging for their old jobs back within a year?
Awful.
The person left the lunch feeling physically sick, entirely convinced they had made a catastrophic mistake.
Right, and the core strategic failure in that scenario was fundamentally an issue of momentum.
Okay, unpack that.
When you share a goal before taking action, you are asking people to blindly trust an untested hypothesis. But imagine the alternate timeline.
Okay.
What if that person had waited? What if they spent 3 months quietly working evenings and weekends, secured 2 solid clients, built a functional portfolio, and then made the announcement at Sunday lunch?
Oh, wow. The entire architecture of the conversation changes.
Radically. Because they wouldn't be asking for permission or belief. They would be reporting on a machine that is already operational.
Yes. So when the family inevitably asks about health insurance or failure rates, the person can calmly reply, oh, I've already factored that in, and my current client revenue covers my premiums.
Because results speak in an empirical language that doubt simply cannot argue with.
That makes total sense. But I do need to push back on this framework for a second because I see a glaring risk here.
Okay, lay it on me.
If the mandate is to keep everything private until we have undeniable results, doesn't that silence provide a highly convenient excuse to just quietly quit?
I see what you mean.
Right. Like, if nobody knows I'm attempting to launch this business, nobody is going to notice or care when I give up after 3 weeks. By hiding the goal, aren't we just avoiding the responsibility of following through?
That is a very fair point, and it's a critical distinction to make.
Right.
Because silence in the absence of action is not discipline. It is avoidance.
Right.
The methodology we are exploring here is not about paranoid secrecy. It is about strict selectivity.
Selectivity.
Yes, it is curating who gets access to your ambition, when they get it, and what specific role they are meant to play.
So we have to draw a hard line between validation and accountability.
Exactly. They might feel similar in the initial moment of sharing, but they engineer completely opposite outcomes.
Okay, so let's break that down. Validation is posting day 1 of my new marathon training block on social media to all your followers.
Yes, and you receive that immediate dopamine surge from the likes and the fire emojis. People comment about how inspiring your journey is.
But the reality of that transaction is incredibly hollow.
Completely hollow. Those followers scroll past and instantly forget your goal. They have absolutely zero stake in your success.
None. And when you inevitably hit a wall on day 12 and decide to sleep in instead of running in the rain, not a single one of those followers is going to show up at your house to ask why you quit.
They supplied the emotional high of validation, but zero structural accountability.
So true accountability looks drastically different.
Yeah, it's isolating the goal and sharing it with exactly one carefully vetted person.
Like maybe it's a friend who is already an experienced runner.
Right. You tell them your plan and you ask them to text you at 6 a.m. on Tuesday with one simple question. Did you put your shoes on?
That completely alters the psychological weight of the goal. You are no longer sharing to extract a dopamine hit from an audience.
Exactly. You are sharing to construct a safety net for your future self, specifically for the moment when your initial motivation inevitably evaporates.
How do you vet that accountability partner, though? Because picking the wrong person seems just as dangerous as posting it to the masses.
It is. A strong accountability partner needs 3 specific traits. First, they must have a baseline understanding of what you were trying to achieve.
Okay.
Second, they must be emotionally detached from your daily fluctuations.
Oh, that's interesting.
And third, they must be willing to make you uncomfortable.
So no yes men.
Right. If you choose someone who is too empathetic, they just become a toxic enabler.
Hmm.
They will tell you it's okay to skip the workout because you had a stressful day at work.
Yeah, you definitely don't want someone who just lets you off the hook, but you also don't want a drill sergeant who shames you into paralysis.
Exactly. It's about finding that rare individual who holds the standard steady
Hmm.
without attaching their own ego to your performance. You are curating a microenvironment to protect the work.
Which really leaves us with the ultimate litmus test for all this.
The diagnostic tool.
Right. How can we honestly self-diagnose our own silence? Like, how do you know if you are practicing this highly strategic selectivity or if you are just hiding in the shadows because you are paralyzed by the fear of failure?
It's ruthlessly simple. It comes down to action. Action is the only metric that separates strategy from fear.
The proof is entirely in the execution.
Always. If you are remaining quiet about your grand ambitions, but you are taking incremental steps every single day, if you are reading the industry reports, writing the terrible first drafts, coding the back end of the website, or quietly waking up at 5 a.m. to train, then your silence is an active shield protecting the dream.
You are in the laboratory doing the grueling work away from the wind.
Yes, but if you are guarding your goals in total secrecy, and days bleed into weeks with absolutely zero forward motion,
Yeah.
if you haven't written a word, made a call, or built a single prototype, then your silence is not protection. It is fear with better branding.
Wow. Fear with better branding. That is a brutal mirror to look into.
It really is.
I think everyone has used that tactic at some point, right? Convincing ourselves we are in stealth mode or conducting deep research, when the reality is we were just sitting on the couch completely terrified of producing something mediocre on the first try.
Oh. Yeah, we use the illusion of preparation to delay the vulnerability of actual execution.
So the practical advice here is to keep the overarching plan hidden from the masses, but you absolutely must keep the daily work visible to yourself.
Yes, you have to track the progress in the physical world.
Like maintaining a private journal or keeping a visible tally on a whiteboard in your office, or just marking an X on a wall calendar for every day you actually do the work.
You are creating a private feedback loop. You prove to yourself that you are moving forward without needing a crowd to validate the motion.
Because you do not owe anyone a preview of the person you are becoming.
Definitely not.
It is completely acceptable to be a messy work in progress behind closed doors.
Yeah. And when we synthesize everything we've unpacked in this episode, it is ultimately about fiercely protecting the momentum of your own life.
Exactly. By sidestepping that premature dopamine trap, you preserve the internal hunger required to actually finish the job.
And by shielding your unformed ideas from unsolicited opinions, you keep other people's risk aversion and comparisonitis out of your mental space.
And on top of that, by selecting true, rigid accountability over cheap validation, you engineer the sustainable conditions necessary for real, tangible achievement.
It really demands a complete rewiring of how we operate in a culture that basically insists we broadcast every passing thought and minor milestone.
It really does. So think about your own life right now. Look at the projects, the career pivots, or the creative endeavors you have been dreaming about and maybe talking a little too much about.
The ones you're getting ahead of yourself on.
Yeah. What is one thing you need to stop announcing to the world and start quietly building today?
Because the friction of reality is the only place where dreams actually take shape.
Perfectly said. Thank you for joining us for this session of the English Boost podcast.
It's been great.
Remember that some parts of your growth are allowed to be completely, unapologetically private. Keep your head down, do the work, and trust that when the results are finally ready, they will speak entirely for themselves. We will catch you next time.